Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Seth Colby. I am one of the board directors for the Hawaii Economics Association. We really appreciate you coming here today. Today we have a great speaker and who I also call a friend, Stuart Coleman. He is a public speaker and environmental advocate. He has 3 award-winning books. I first knew him as the Hawaii manager for the Surfrider Foundation, and he has since moved on to taking an interest in cesspools and human feces. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from him. He has since founded the nonprofit Wastewater Alternatives and Innovation. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that, his organization, and his efforts in a couple minutes. But just before we go forward, we just want to publicize and take this opportunity to mention that next month we will be having another great discussion, which will be focused on housing. And we'll have Sterling Higa from the Hawaii Housing Association. And what we're going to be looking at is zoning issues, right? So if we eliminated single family zoning, would that actually increase the housing supply here in Hawaii? So we'll be looking at that next month. But in the meantime, we look forward to hearing from Stuart. So Stuart, I'm going to just pass the torch to you and you can take it from there. Just a quick reminder to everybody, as the presentation is going forward, if you have any questions or ideas, please put those ideas or questions into the Q&A, and I will be the one asking those questions. So take it away, Stuart. Thanks again for coming.
Mahalo, Seth. Thank you for that introduction. That's the first time that I've heard someone say I'm interested in human feces. So yes, I came about a little differently from that. I'm going to reshare again because it shared the wrong screen. But this is something that I got into. When you get into a business like this, it's can be very difficult to kind of take it with a straight face. And so I'm hoping that you will also enjoy my sense of humor. What got me into this when I was at Surfrider Foundation was we were focused on water quality. And I realized that one of the biggest contributors to poor water quality was the fact that we had 83,000 cesspools across the state. And so we have the highest number of cesspools per capita, and I'll tell you what those are. But the 2 most important reasons why we're here today to deal with these issues are number 1 and number 2. So I'll let you sit on that for a second. So this is the team at VI. I always have to acknowledge them because they are amazing. Chris is on the call with me today, but we have people that focus on water quality and on our workforce development and really training the workers. And that's one of the silver linings on this issue, that there are a lot of economic opportunities, which I'll discuss.
Hey, Stuart, I think you're not sharing your screen yet.
Yeah, this is I'm having a little issue. Sorry about that. It shows that it's sharing on my end. I don't know why it's not doing this. Apologies. We just had it worked out before that it was ready to go. So okay, is it showing now?
I don't see anything.
Okay. Chris, do you mind stepping in and showing your screen? Sorry, folks, I've been having a lot of problems with my computer lately, and I think it's time for a new one, unfortunately. Yeah, so we're
okay, there we go.
There we go. Thank you. And we've got so we're at the mission. Bai, as you all know, is the Hawaiian word for water, and that's the heart of what we do. And so we aim to protect water quality by reducing sewage pollution. And we do that in restoring our watersheds through innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions, for waste and wastewater management. And we're different from a lot of nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits tend to focus on, it's like people and the environment or profits. And to me, the fastest changing sector of society is business and in the economic sphere. And so that's where we come at this as more of a social and economic entrepreneurship. And so our vision is to help homeowners and communities with this transition because we help pass laws to mandate upgrading all cesspools by the year 2050. And we do this through outreach and education, innovative technology, and then we try to get those in the ground in successful pilot projects. And then we're working at the ledge doing policy and advocacy and financial resources to help homeowners with this very expensive problem that, as I was mentioned in the emails, is a $2 to $3 billion problem for the state. All right, we can go to the next slide. And so this next slide is a video that just gives a really good overview of what a cesspool is and how they're different from septic systems, and it uses graphic images, which is really helpful. And the volume's not in there.
Shoot.
I can just walk us through, it's basically a cesspool is an open pit in the ground that during Hawaii's rapid development, when a lot of houses were being developed in a very short amount of time, they just allowed people to do these holes in the ground where all of the waste in a house would go. And that's all your black water from your toilets and from your kitchen, along with all your gray water from your showers and sinks and washing machines. And so it's been making headlines around the state and around the country. Just so you all know, this is an issue that people are very aware of around the country. And so you have perforated sides with the cesspool, but there's no treatment. And so it all kind of just pours into the ground. And when you have a porous lava rock, that means there's very, very little treatment. And so it goes directly from the home into this pit, into the ground and into the groundwater. And all the groundwater eventually through this porous lava rock goes into, our potential water sources and the ocean. There are all kinds of bacteria and pathogens that can cause serious illnesses. And it can affect drinking water in certain parts. 98% of our state is dependent on our aquifer, the water. And so we have to make sure that it doesn't threaten that, because those toxins can go out, and recent studies that I'll talk about show how it's affected coral reefs and led to the decline of our coral reefs, which are not only hugely valuable culturally and environmentally, but also they economically, they're worth billions of dollars each year to the state in recreation, seafood, and in all kinds of other ways, and for the tourism industry. And so, looking across the state, these 83,000 cesspools release 52 million gallons a day of untreated sewage. And we pass laws to make sure that they're replaced by the year 2050. And so we're working to make sure that we're protecting public health, protecting the environment. And if you want to learn more, you can go to hawaiicesspooltool.org, and it shows where all of those cesspools are across the state. And it's a very, just a good, along with our website, vicleanwater.org, which we'll have on the slides coming up, Chris, going forward. That's, that's important to remember, that's a source, because I'm going to give you a lot of information. We need to move forward. Chris, can we go back to the slideshow? You might have to stop your screen sharing, Chris, for a second to go back, to the slideshow. So just to kind of touch base on those threats, in the next slide, there are all kinds of public health hazards and environmental hazards, along with, obvious drinking water pollution. The only place in the country that has more cesspools than Hawaii is another island, Long Island, New York. And they have more than we do, but we have the most per capita. And just to show you the economic implications of how serious this issue is, we used to go to Long Island every summer, my family, and loved going, crabbing and clamming and everything. The shellfish industry in many parts of that whole area have completely been shut down because of this very issue. So this is generations old industry that had to shut down because of the nitrate pollution and because of the pathogens. It wasn't safe to eat what came out of the bays there. And so, Hawaii also, we have the highest rate of MRSA and staph infections in the country. And so they're pathogens. Anybody who's paddled for a living, how high the staph rates are, and MRSA rates. And so it's something we have to be very careful about. Likewise, environmental hazards include, sewage pollution on coral reefs. And part of that's the nutrient pollution that leads to invasive algal overgrowth. If we go to the next slide, up and down the East Coast, because of this very issue, they're having problems with toxic, harmful algal blooms. And we have the same kind of issues here, but instead of it being on the surface and so bad that, it leads to massive fish kills that are really obvious, our algal blooms are under the surface and they smother the coral. And so that's partly what's killing our coral. And again, as I mentioned, that has a huge economic impact. There was a study that came out in the fall of last year in Nature, one of the preeminent environmental publications in the world, showing that wastewater pollution and the decline of reef fish are the two most important factors in Hawaii's reef resilience, and that land-based sources of pollution, specifically from sedimentation and runoff and cesspools and injection wells, were one of the leading causes of this. I wrote an article in Hawaii Business Magazine in September, if you want to refer to it. On the right, it's Cesspools are killing Hawaii's coral reefs. And you can learn more about that. It kind of puts in layman's term what was in the in that Nature science paper. And then there's more research that just came out of in a new study about how the economic impacts on having cesspools in these substandard systems that have been banned for decades in every other state. Hawaii was the only state in the country for 3.5 decades that allowed these substandard systems. And it says, one of the findings was that within the specifications of our models, that the presence of an OSDS, or on-site disposal system like cesspools, lowers property transaction prices. And so what we've seen is people spending all the amount of money they had to buy a house, really leveraging everything because housing prices are so high here in Hawaii. And then they were told that, before you can do any renovations, before you can do anything, you have to convert the cesspool at anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000. And you had some people that were really, really threatened and wanted to, sue somebody, whether it was the state or their realtors. And so we're enacting policies and really trying to do outreach and education to make people aware of these, because it does have an effect. And the closer we get to that deadline of 2050, more and more people are going to be affected. Because if you get a mortgage, you have to spend, that you've got 30 years on the standard mortgage, and that's already going up against the mandatory conversion deadline. All right, moving forward, just a real quick primer. Cesspools are just holes in the ground like we talked about. They have perforated sides. Some of them are just dirt. Some of them have a little bit of concrete walls on the sides or tiles. A septic system has an enclosed tank where all the waste goes to. And so all the solids or the sludge settles at the bottom. And then the fog layer, the fats, oils, and greases rises to the top. And then what goes out into the leach field is that effluent. So there's definitely some people, like in Kauai recently, they were saying, oh, they're basically the same thing. A septic system is always better than a cesspool. And so what a septic system doesn't do, though, is reduce the nitrogen. And so that's something that we're trying to educate people on moving forward, because it has such a toll on the reefs. All right, and just a quick overview of the legislation to see where we are and how we got here. If we go to the next slide, we started, over 10 years ago working on this issue. And in 2016, we passed Act 120 to ban the construction of new cesspools. And again, that was 3.5 decades after the last state of Rhode Island did that. And then the next year, we passed Act 125 that mandates the conversion of all cesspools by 2050. And then the following year, we created Act 132 to create the cesspool conversion working group, which I served on for 4 years, from 2018 to 2022. And then we submitted our report to the state legislature at the end of 2022. And if we go to the next slide, that year we were able to pass a number of bills. The most important, which I'll highlight, is just HB 2195, which is known as Act 153 now, to create a pilot program to give up to $20,000 in grants to low and moderate income homeowners to help with their cesspool conversion, because we realize this is a big financial burden. And so we are trying to help homeowners with that conversion process. And that was so popular that the $5 million, as soon as they opened up, it was all accounted for within 3 days. So we're trying to go back this year and increase that amount that's given from 20 to 30,000 to homeowners, and then also create the amount of funding that we have for it. If we go to the next slide, these are some of the bills we're working on this year. HB 2743, and then this is Senate Bill 2952, that's the companion, requiring wastewater plans from the counties so the counties can work closer with the state. And just so everybody knows, the state controls all kind of cesspools, individual wastewater systems through the wastewater branch. The counties control the sewers. And so we're pushing to do more decentralized systems. And so the counties and state need to work together to do those. And then we're also working to do cesspool conversions in priority areas 1 and 2, which are the most polluting, and that's about 17,000 cesspools by 2035 and 2040. That's actually a misprint, 2040 respectively, because that's the only way. Also, if we don't stage this and require earlier deadlines, we're not going to make that 2050 deadline at all. There'll be a bottleneck. So we have to start with the ones that we know are polluting our groundwater and drinking water sources and harming reefs. Start with those with earlier deadlines. And then we have other bills to help bring in new staff positions to the Department of Health so they can implement those grants and then also apply for federal funding. Because at this time, we have access to more federal funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law and through the Inflation Reduction Act and other laws than we've ever seen in the history of the country. So about 20 to 25% of the entire US population is on individual wastewater systems. So this isn't just a problem in Hawaii, although we have the worst cesspool problem, it's a problem throughout the country. And we have a window to access federal money, free money, to help homeowners and communities across the state. So it's something that we're really urging that we need to take advantage of. We'll go to the next slide. And then just I want to give you a quick overview of the cesspool priority areas across the state. If you go to the cesspool priority tool, then or our website, hawaiicleanwater.org, you can find out more. But this shows you the areas where the priority one, where we know they're contaminating drinking water sources and sensitive waters are the red. And then priority two are in yellow. So this is a statewide problem. You can see it in every one. Priority two is orange, excuse me, and then priority three is yellow. And the Big Island has over half the cesspools across the state. And again, we're trying to get these converted. So the problem is when you do the basic logistical math is if we have 83,000 cesspools to convert by 2050, at our current rate, we're doing about 200 to 300 conversions per year. We'll never make it. So we have to increase that to about 3,000 conversions per year to reach that goal. And the average costs are, 30 to 50,000 per home. So we're talking about people go from $2 to $4 billion total cost. Now that seems like only a liability, but with it there are a lot of opportunities. And a civilized society is, kind of evaluated by how you dispose of your waste. And so we kind of just everything was underground and it was out of sight, out of mind. And now we're finally saying, hey, we can't ignore this any longer. It is taking its toll environmentally and human health wise, but also, economically. Go to the next slide. So here, I just want to kind of give you an overview of some of the technologies and our criteria of how we bring in these groups from across the world to invest in Hawaii. So we're looking for innovative technologies that reuse our resources because, believe it or not, everything can be reused. The solids and the liquids can be 100% reused. And in an age of drought and decreasing water supplies, it's going to be critical and increasing fire hazards to reuse these resources. And we're looking for companies that have a mission-driven ethos, commitment to help us solve our wastewater problems, and they have to offer pro bono and low bono donations of equipment and services. That's part of our agreement with each one. So we've been able to help a number of homeowners, and we'll tell you about some opportunities that we have to do that going forward. And they help us work with workforce development and support our mission to help the people of Hawaii with this kind of massive problem. So these are three of the companies that work on individual wastewater systems. So you'll sometimes hear IWS, and those are the ones at the home level where you have a septic tank, you convert the cesspool at a septic tank and a leach field. These three systems all do denitrification. So they're removing that harmful nitrogen that creates the algal overgrowth and can pollute our drinking water supply. And I forgot to mention in Long Island, New York, also those increasing rates of nitrogen that are found in the drinking water are correlated to increasing rates of cancer. So there are real public health concerns about this. And so one of them is Elgin. This is a veteran-owned company from the East Coast, and they've donated 2 entire systems to local homeowners here. And just by including this layer of sand, a specific type of sand, it helps do that denitrification because there are microbes in the soil that actually treat naturally the harmful bacteria and viruses and pathogens. And then there are constructed wetlands. We've worked with a group called Ridge to Reefs, another nonprofit that's on the East Coast, and they use these nature-based systems that can remove a lot of the nitrogen that normally would only be available for what's called an aerobic treatment unit, an ATU. And so we work with a group called Fuji Clean that's one of the best and high-performing providers in the country. And we're lucky to be able to use the research that Long Island has been doing for decades to find some of the best companies that are providing the best solutions and have the best results. And so along with those individual systems, we are trying to recycle some of the gray water. And again, that is the water from sinks and showers and washing machines. And there's no reason we should not be reusing this because it doesn't have all the harmful pathogens that the bathrooms will have, or sometimes kitchen sinks. So one new partner is Leapfrog Design, and it separates the gray water and it treats it using plants. And these planter boxes look like they're just decorative. They're part of the aesthetic of the house. They're really beautiful. They've been featured in magazines. So we're really excited about this because we think we could eventually include some of the black water in these, and then you can stay above ground, avoiding the excavation costs, which is what drive up the cost of these cesspool conversions when you have to dig in the ground and get this big equipment. So that's exciting. And then inside the house, we have solutions. Composting toilets are one solution, but the Department of Health doesn't like those. And so they've kind of steered away. We introduced the Cinderella incineration toilet from Norway. And we introduced the first one in all of the United States, except for the Northeast in Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. And it's been so successful. We did that 2.5 years ago that there are more than 60 units across the islands now. Government agencies have bought them. It's waterless. It produces harmless, pathogen-free ash. So it's a really kind of remarkable thing for if you have places that are off the grid, they can use gas, propane, or in the house, they can use electricity, but you don't have all the plumbing that goes with it, which is really exciting. And then going forward, we're talking about decentralized solutions because there's no way, we realize we can't convert all cesspools, all 83,000 individually. There just won't be enough time, and it's an inefficient use of money and resources. So we're trying to move towards decentralized cluster systems where you have packaged treatment plants that are designed specifically and can be shipped over and kept above ground, again, avoiding those excavation costs that engineering firms can do, and goes into the tens to hundreds of millions. And so one company we work with is Arinco with this, it's called the pressurized liquid only sewer. And so you put one tank in your yard to collect it, and then it only pumps from the clear zone, which is about 70 to 80% of that tank. And so you can have small diameter pumps going to slightly larger diameter pumps that go along the roads that can just be trenched 1.5 feet, 2 feet below the surface. So you don't have to dig up entire roads at the time. You can do this on the side of the road and take it either to a local manhole if your houses are near existing sewer lines, or to a new treatment facility like a packaged treatment plant. And I'll show you an example of that in the next slide. So this is a company that does pre-engineered packaged treatment plants that they can ship out that are ready to go for a particular site. And so we're looking at this in places like Ma'alaya, Maui, and in Milili'i on the Big Island. They're one of the few companies that uses stainless steel, and with Hawaii's proximity to the coast and salt water and salt air, you have to use it because we've seen systems that were installed and within 10, 15 years, they were already just so corroded you couldn't use them. But again, the great thing about this is they can be shipped out, put on a concrete pad, and it's plug and play, and they're ready to go. And it just decreases the cost dramatically for a county and a community to do this, or for developers that are starting a housing development. And we're kind of wrapping up here. I'll just talk about there's some financial assistance available. If we go to the next slide, through the USDA. I'm going to be quite honest. We have not seen a lot of success with this. I think we need to put pressure on the USDA local offices, just because the guidelines for the minimum income levels and the value of the property, Hawaii has some of the highest property values in the country. So you have people that are really like don't have much money, but the USDA is looking at them as like, oh, you're house rich. And so we need to get these loans, more of these loans out. But we're also working on big federal grants to help homeowners through the EPA and other USDA grants. And so that's something that we're very excited about. We are fairly confident this year, if we can get your help and sending in supportive testimony. And if you're interested, if you can just email us at info@vicleanwater.org. We have a Cesspool legislative task force. And so we can get you to help, we can show you the bills when the hearings are, but we really want to renew these grant programs to help homeowners with the cost of conversion, especially in priority 1 and 2 areas. And so we're hopefully going to get that passed this session. And then we're working on other grants from the state revolving fund, these SRF loans that we can get from the EPA. And right now there are no interest forgivable loans that we can get to people. But again, the DOH does not have the staffing to do that. So we're working on moving that forward. And then this is an opportunity that we have on the Big Island. If you know anybody, if they are in qualifying zip codes and have 3 to 4 bedrooms, American Savings Bank is offering to do these 3 free cesspool conversions for low to moderate income homeowners. So let us know if you know anybody who might qualify for that. And there's the tinyurl.com/vi apply. Please encourage them. This is the last week that we're taking applications for that. And again, we're just trying to, offer these free conversions. All right, next slide, as we're wrapping up here. Finally, I just want to mention the workforce development program because this is really exciting. This is one of the benefits to the state, is that we applied for, as soon as we started our nonprofit and the propitious, time of January 2020, right before a global pandemic, we thought we're done for. We're not going to survive this. But we pivoted and realized we need to do workforce development, because Hawaii at that time, 1 month before the pandemic, had the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country. Within 1 month after the pandemic, we had the highest unemployment rate in the entire country. So because of our dependence on the tourism industry, we realized we have to do workforce development. This is a field unlike the construction industry or the tourism industry. There are no boom and bust cycles. This is continued growth and will not stop even after the 2050 deadline, because these systems have to be replaced. And so we got a $1 million grant from the Department of Labor, sharing with another group, to offer these introductions that steer people to these careers. And it's been going really well. We offer $500 stipends for successful completion. And Chris, who's here with me today, he was in our first cohort, and we snapped him right up and hired him. And there are all kinds of jobs, from blue collar jobs to white collar jobs, from contractors to inspectors. And we are really very excited. We finished cohort 1 and graduated 30 students. Cohort 2 is ongoing right now, and we're anticipating graduating 54 students, and that'll end at the end of February. And then we're also looking forward to a 3rd cohort in the fall. So if you're interested, please let us know. And yes, we'll wrap it up right now. And this is the best part. Thank you for bearing with me through all this. We can now go to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Stuart. That was great. That was really interesting. It's interesting for me because uh, my job is I'm the tax research and planning officer, so I often see these tax credits given to these programs. And one of the things that we've actually seen is most of the tax credits were underutilized, right? So even if you offer people incentives, it is very hard to get people to use them, even utilize the incentives. So I was, I, and this is great for me as well, so I can just understand the problem. We have some great questions coming up, and I encourage everybody in the audience, if you have more, to do the Q&A. But can you just walk me through what it's like? So let's say I just purchased a home.
Uh-huh.
Would I have to know that it has the septic tank or the cesspool versus septic tank? Am I required to know that fact? Um, Once I do decide to get update that, like what are the procedures? Do I have to find an engineer that presents all these opportunities to me? Like what's going on? What is the permitting there? And then what happens if I don't do anything by 2050? What happens?
All right, starting off with a softball question, a four-part, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, um, thanks, Seth. Yeah, it's a great question because the first time we offered the tax rebate incentive, it wasn't there wasn't any hardly education or promotion about it, and our nonprofit hadn't started. People weren't even aware about what cesspools were, and so now I think if we did a tax incentive, it would be taken advantage of in a much more dramatic way. But again, if you're offering like a $10,000 to $20,000 tax rebate from the state, you got to have a very high income to warrant that. And so it definitely was more focused on upper level income. But for people who have, rental properties, or for people who are doing vacation, housing, there's a bill right now to kind of mandate they do it because they will have the appetite to do this. And when you have people coming in and like houses all of a sudden being filled with people, we really need to convert those kind of short-term rentals first. There is a disclosure form on whenever you buy a house. We're trying to kind of amplify that a little bit so people are very aware because, when you're signing all those documents, sometimes people miss it. And so maybe creating a separate form. The Hawaii Realtors Association has become a great advocate. They realized at first they were very resistant, 3 or 4 years ago, and they didn't want to highlight this problem. And now they realize it is taking away from the value of homes. It complicates sales. And so they've been just amazing kind of advocates for educating people of like, we need to take care of this. And so once you buy a house, you should know, whether you have a cesspool or septic system. And then, we have something because we love poo puns called the Potty Portal on our website that you can go to, and it kind of walks you through all those steps. And so, yeah, you want to, and we have a list of engineers on there and contractors through various links, and you can kind of see what you need to do moving forward to get that done. And then we're also here to help. Yeah.
And then just what happens in 2050?
So 2050 is when all of the cesspools have to be converted by and mandated. And that, like I was saying, we've kind of realized that will be, and I hope this isn't just a PG audience, because again, we love our puns, but it would be a little bit of a shit show if we wait till 2050 to start, mandating all these conversions. It really has to be done earlier. So you have to have earlier deadlines, especially for the most polluting areas, because scientists tell us, and these are scientists that have worked on this issue a lot, and really focused on especially coral reefs. They're saying a lot of the coral reefs will not survive till 2050. So to give you a quick example, in Puako, in Malaya, they've gone from 70 to 80% reef cover and pristine corals to 7 or 8%. And they're not even sure they can restore those because the damage is so bad. And so we might have lost those reefs forever. And what that means economically is you lose the value of the reefs recreation wise, and then with the fish go, because this is where all the most bio life in the sea is around coral reefs. But you also lose our protection against storms, hurricanes, tsunamis, all of that. And so the liabilities we would incur go into the billions of dollars when we lose our coral reefs.
Mm-hmm. And in 2050, when this goes into effect, are they going to fine people yearly if you have it, or what is the enforcement mechanism?
Yeah, so and to show you a success story with large capacity cesspools, anything over 1,000 gallons per day, and they rate it based on how many bedrooms. So if you have 5 bedrooms, that's the maximum. At 200 gallons a day, you're at 1,000 gallons. Anything over that, or a commercial property, the EPA oversees. And so Hawaii had all these large capacity cesspools in 2004, 5, and 6. They said, those have to be converted or you're going to get massive fines, thousands and thousands of dollars a day. And to show you, because a lot of people are like, oh, it'll never happen, we'll never do this. Those cesspools were converted within 3 years. There's still some out there that weren't on the EPA's radar, and they're working on those, but it can be done. It has to be done. There's no choice on this matter. Some people are like, oh, we can continue to kick the can down the road. We really can't, environmentally, economically, and in human health terms.
Great. Okay, so we have a long list of questions, so I'm gonna just go down the list and repeat them to you, and then you can go and answer them how you'd like.
Okay.
So Claire from the Big Island says, decentralized system. Is that where the individual homeowner maintains their own system? So sorry, you mentioned this in the state's position. Is that correct? This is the state's position. Is that correct?
Thank you for that that question, Claire. A decentralized system is actually where the county or a community help run it. So in Ma'alaya, where you have 10 condos right on the water, they were injecting all their partially treated waste into the ground. That's partly why we lost all the coral reefs in Ma'alaya, which used to look like Tahiti just decades and decades ago, just pristine corals. But these are systems that are either operated by the county or by what's called a special improvement district or a sewer improvement district, or on the Big Island, a community facilities district. And that's where you get special grant to say, okay, this area is going to take care of its own waste. We're going to go after government grants and treat it there. So it's not at the homeowner level, but you need to connect the homes together to get it to the treatment association. So the benefit is instead of a homeowner having, and Frank put in the chat, why spend 30 to 50,000 now if the county is planning on expanding sewers? The county has said, and the state has confirmed, there will be minimal sewer expansion because that is the highest, most expensive form of treatment. It's anywhere from $1 million a mile to lay sewer lines to, on the Big Island, it's $5 million a mile. And so it becomes just so prohibitively expensive. That's why we're offering alternatives, like where you have this pressurized liquid only sewer where you can use small little lines that are just trenched on the side of the road. That's going to be a fraction of the cost to do that. And then once you have that at a decentralized solution, then you just start paying fees, monthly fees, instead of having to come up with $30 to $40 to $50,000. So we agree that it doesn't make sense to do that, but the county's not going to come in with big sewer either. So there's this middle ground that we're trying to create. It really didn't exist before, except at a few private treatment plants across the state, where we get access to federal funding and the state and the counties work together to create these districts where we treat it and then just start charging utility fees.
Great.
Sorry, very complicated. I hope I'm.
Yeah, I know you're doing a great job. Thank you. You mentioned permitting on one of your slides. Does a homeowner need to go through DPP as part of the cesspool conversion process? If so, is this a choke point or is this something that needs to be addressed?
Great question. You don't have to go through DPP to do your permitting for your cesspool. You have to go to the wastewater branch at the Department of Health. And again, there's sites on our website. If you go to the potty portal, and maybe Chris, I'll ask if you can put that in the chat. What you do have to do is anytime you do any renovations on your house, if they're major renovations, the DPP is going to tell you you first have to convert your cesspool. So that's one of the first areas that people come upon that pain point of like, you can't get those permits until you convert your cesspool. So that's where DPP is involved. But as far as the permitting for the system, that's a part that goes directly through the Department of Health and their wastewater branch.
Great.
Yeah.
And then from Patricia, what innovative financing models or government interventions could be developed to assist homeowners for the high cost of conversion?
So along with those grants that we're talking about, we're also trying to apply for EPA community change grants where we can work in a community that is usually more of a rural, lower income community where we can help bring in the money where they would never have the money to do that. But if you have an HOA, for instance, that is a legal entity. You could start to create a community facility district or a sewer improvement district and start to treat your own waste. So what is the community? Remind me, in Kaneohe, Haiku Plantation, or Haiku Gardens, I think, in that area. They have their own HOA. They have cesspools. They're going to have to convert all those. And we're saying instead of doing those, making the homeowners do everyone individually, let's do these inexpensive lines where we connect all the houses and then just connect them to a local sewer line. And then that would be a lot less expensive for the homeowner because then you just start paying monthly fees.
Great. Here's a pretty specific question from James. We are selling a home in Mauaus in Maui, and we were told by the county that cesspools had to be replaced with an aerobic wastewater treatment plant because we had 8-bedroom and 5-bath. However, they could not tell me what to look for, but told me that I had to rip up the entire front of the property to do it. We gave the buyer credit and just kicked the can down the road because we could not get clarity from the county.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, James. We are working now with folks at Maui Meadows, and we're trying to come up with this alternative solution so you don't have to do that. So we can just move into creating a community facilities district. So there is Chris, if you can somehow get this, there is John Laney is working on this, and he's created a petition, and they just need to get 140 names on that petition for Maui Meadows to create its own community facilities district. And then they can start to access federal, state funding to do that so that all of those homeowners, all 700 homeowners, don't have to start doing their individual conversions in Maui Meadows. So that's a perfect example of where we could do this.
Great. Another question from Jennifer. You said it's very difficult to meet the 2050 deadline. Why are you advocating for bringing it forward to 2030 if it's already going to be so hard to meet the 2050 deadline?
Yeah. So I think the reason why it's going to be very hard to do that is because people are kind of like, oh, I've got till 2050, I'm not going to do anything. And so that's why you need earlier deadlines so that people in the worst areas where we know there's documented pollution and it's harming human health. And let me just give you an example of that, just because, so to bring it home. in Hawaii Paradise Park, which along with Maui Meadows is one of the largest areas in the state that has the highest number of cesspools. They have almost 1,000. They tested private drinking water wells in the area, and 50% of them had fecal indicated bacteria in their water, in their drinking water. So this isn't hypothetical of the harms it does. This is real harms, and it can make people sick, and cause illnesses that, we might not even know what the source is. And so we have to have those earlier deadlines to save those places, but also protect public health, and then just logistically to start the conversion process going, just because we're the last state. And to further bring it home economically, our biggest industry in the state is tourism, right? If our coral reefs continue to get degraded and our water quality continues to go down, people have a lot of options of places they can go to. We've always assumed Hawaii's beauty. We are the top destination in many ways. But if our water quality goes down and our coral reefs start to go and the fish start to go, and it's not safe to swim in the waters, you can bank on the fact that our numbers will go down for sure. So it does have a bottom line economic impact on our state.
Why were we the last state, or why are we so slow in addressing this issue compared to other states?
I think partly development just happened so fast in the 60s, 70s, and it continues. And that we were just kind of letting people do their own thing because we couldn't keep pace. And, honestly, it's a lack of planning. It was poor planning on the state's part and the county's part not to make sure, because when you're building developments, that's when it's much easier to put in the infrastructure, and they should have done it then. They should have required. And there's also a lack of enforcement. You have laws on the books and they don't enforce them. And so some people go, oh, well, it's just easier to do without a permit. I'm just going to do it without. And so there's a bureaucracy that we really need to take care of. It's affecting all aspects of our life economically. I mean, I think they are making progress at the DPP and going through applications. They realize this is, a stumbling block for progress for the state. So I think there are a variety of reasons for that.
Great. And then we have a question from Claire that says, do you see the state and county allowing the gray water reuse systems being allowed and approved in the permitting process as part of the new build or as build permit on a remodel?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because we really do need to pressure the state to adapt more models, because there is innovative technology, and that's what we're all about bringing it. But Hawaii didn't have like an open, and it's not a clear pathway for new technologies to come in. The more technologies we have coming in, the more providers, just by basic laws of supply and demand, where the prices are going to go down. And so we need to open up this process more at the Department of Health to really encourage more systems and more providers to come in. The other thing about the reuse system that I didn't really mention, but it's going to become a top priority going forward, is we can reuse this treated wastewater at the decentralized level for fire prevention. Hawaii went from burning 6,000 acres a year 10 years ago to 20,000 and more now after Lahaina. It's gone way up, and that's only going to increase. So we have to figure out ways to reuse this to treat. And the tragedy is we were part of the Maui injection wells case, and we were begging the county, use this treated wastewater instead of injecting it, use it for fire prevention, and they didn't. And I think we probably could have prevented what happened in Lahaina. But I think now the most important lesson going forward is that we can do better. We can create fire breaks where we have green rows that are beautiful, and that we can irrigate with this water that serves as fire breaks, wind breaks, and sediment breaks.
Great. Well, it seems like there's a lot of incentives and win-wins to address this problem, even if it just seems like, yes, there is a cost of several $billions, but the payoff is actually even greater than that. And you've done a great job articulating this. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get to everybody's questions, but may I just direct them to you and your organization? And I think you guys are pretty good at attending to all the individual needs and questions as well. So Stuart, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and address this issue that's really chronic and central to so much of Hawaii, and it's an intractable problem, but you're making it more tractable. So we appreciate that.
Mahalo, Seth, and for all the good work you guys do. I see the speakers going out, you always have good topics, so we appreciate you including us.
Good. So to all of you out there, you will be sent a little questionnaire. We always do appreciate your feedback in order for us to provide a better a better product for you guys going forward. So please give us your feedback as well. And we hope to see you at next month's event on zoning, the impacts of zoning on our housing supply. So mahalo, everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Mahalo.